So you may be wondering, is it best to get the iPhone 16 for $799 or save $200 and get the 16e instead? Well, let's delve into that because the answer may not be as simple as you think, guys. Beginning with the design, the 16e may be part of the iPhone 16 series, but let you guys in on a secret. This phone is actually just a repackaged iPhone 14, and so we have flat sides and a notch, whereas the 16 has a newer design language with rounded corners that honestly don't make a massive difference, but yes, it is slightly more comfy in the hand. But more importantly, we have thinner bezels and the fancy dynamic island. Now I know I did criticize the island back when it released with the 14 Pro, and it's still not a must-have feature by any means, but I can't lie, Apple's baking in some really cool animations with the island. Look how awesome Name Drop looks. I'm a sucker for some sick animations, and I feel like it's slowly being integrated further into the UI, and so whilst you can live with the notch right now, it will continue to become more and more dated as developers play around with the island for their applications. Moving on to another aesthetic change, the 16e is a pretty boring iPhone that only comes in black and white. The regular 16 does have much superior color choices in my opinion, but yes, I know it's just colors at the end of the day. Both do share the same USB-C port with USB 2 speeds and the action button, which is a customizable button you can configure to launch various functions. The 16 does of course include camera control, which is a dedicated camera button, but honestly I don't find myself using it as often, guys, so it's not a huge omission on the 16e. Materials wise, these phones are near identical with an aluminium and glass housing, however you do get the newer generation ceramic shield on the 16, which is 50% stronger according to Apple, though in my opinion most are going to use a screen protector anyway, so the 16e having previous gen ceramic shields is a non-issue. And regardless of the generation of ceramic shields, the Air's probably going to be able to scratch it because whilst these screens are very shatter resistant, they're not scratch resistant. Both are IP68 rated by the way, so if you accidentally drop your phone in the toilet for whatever reason, you should be fine. You know what would be a fine thing for you to do for me? Subscribe to the channel. I know, horrible segue, but I would appreciate it. It would bring you the latest about Apple right to the subscription box, so please consider it. Join the Saranbyte gang now. Moving on to the display, we once again have some minor changes between these devices. So as I said before, the display on the 16 is slightly larger because of slimmer bezels. It doesn't make a huge difference to be fair, but you do also get the island, which gives the phone a nice visual refresh. But that's not the major upgrade, guys. No. The big upgrade is 1000 nits of brightness for typical usage, 1600 nits for HDR content, and a whopping 2000 nits of brightness outdoors. The outdoor brightness especially is a game changer. Now yes, because I live in the UK, we only get sunlight once or twice a year, but occasionally when there is a bit of sun, the higher brightness does come in clutch. And before you say it, I do not notice the phone overheating when it's pumping out 2000 nits of brightness. It's a useful upgrade, guys, on the 16, but the 16e's display is not bad, it's still fine, and both are still 60Hz. But yes, the weakest spec for the 16e has to be the fact it only offers 800 nits of brightness outdoors. Performance-wise, we have very similar specs on paper, with both offering the A18 with 8 gigs of RAM, however, the 16e does have one less GPU core. The thing is though, when it comes to regular usage, you're not going to be able to tell much of a difference, and both fly through anything you throw at it. And because they're both using the latest A18, you're future-proofed for many years, and you're going to get updates for many years, and both phones will continue to get Apple Intelligence support, which will come in handy when Apple eventually adds useful AI features to iOS. Moving to the camera, we have very similar main cameras on these devices. Whilst both are 40 megapixels, the 16 does have a bigger sensor, and it can sometimes produce slightly crispier shots, but honestly it does not make a massive difference. The average consumer is going to be happy with the 16e's camera as well, and because both are 48 megapixels, they both feature the 2x crop feature, which Apple kind of falsely advertises as a 2-in-1 fusion camera. I see what you're doing, Timothy, that's a little cheeky, but at the same time, this does mostly make up for the lack of a telephoto, so if you're going to be zooming into things pretty often, I'm glad both the 16e and the 16 offer this. They both also have the same Smart HDR5 processing, but the 16 does include the newer photographic styles that allows you to fine-tune the look you want, and the 16 sensor does also include sensor shift stabilization. Video, however, is solid on both phones, and the front-facing camera is exactly the same. Very reliable front snapper. The 16 does of course have an ultra-wide, which gives you zoomed out shots you simply cannot achieve on the 16e, and do remember you also get macro support as a result of the ultra-wides. Another feature you miss out on are next-gen portraits. Now the portrait mode itself is not radically different, it does pretty similar shots, but the 16 automatically collects the data needed for portrait modes, and so you can now turn most photos into portrait in post. That's super clutch. I no longer have to manually put the phone in portrait modes. The phone just does everything for me, which is great. And it's a shame the 16E does miss out on this. You also don't get cinematic modes, spatial video supports, the better quick take supports, or action mode on the 16E, which the 16 offers. However, the 16E does have audio mix similar to its iPhone 16 cousins, and this feature is also pretty nice for isolating my voice in a noisy background. Now, the modem in these devices are another key difference because the 16 does use a Qualcomm modem like pretty much every other modern iPhone, but the 16E does get Apple's first in-house modem called the C1. The speeds are slightly worse on the 16E, especially if you're in the US. The 16E does lack millimeter wave, whereas the 16 does include it, but honestly it does not make a massive difference when it comes to regular usage. The 16 does include Wi-Fi 7, which does help future-proof it, but both support Bluetooth 5.3. I think the bigger connectivity miss, however, is the lack of any U1 or U2 chipset in the 16E. That ultra-wideband chipset comes in handy for some features like precision finding for Find My, and gives you a superior AirTag experience. You also lack Thread support for whatever reason on the 16E. If you're wondering if Face ID is any faster on the 16 because of the island, no, that's not the case. Both are very similar in this aspect, and the same goes for speakers and mics. Here's a comparison for you guys. So here's a mic test on the iPhone 16E for you guys, and here's the iPhone 16. There shouldn't be a huge difference. They sound about the same. Coming to battery life, that new C1 and a larger battery does mean the 16E offers considerably better endurance than the 16. Apple on their site claims 16E offers 26 hours of video playback compared to 22 hours on the 16, and 90 hours of audio playback compared to 80 on the 16. This does make a difference in day-to-day usage, and is probably the biggest reason you might want to consider the 16E, because for many, battery life does make a difference, and for its size, the 16E does have some insane endurance. Charging wise, both charge up to 50% in 30 minutes with a 20-watt adapter, which is not the fastest in the world, but I'm not too fussed about the lack of charging speed upgrades, because both these phones comfortably get you through the day, and so you're likely going to be charging overnight anyway, in which case you won't need ludicrous charging speeds. The biggest miss with the 16E charging wise is the lack of MagSafe, which I did not expect considering nearly every iPhone since the 12 has included this, and so the lack of magnets here means you cannot use a wide range of accessories on the 16E that you can with the 16. I am aware you can get a MagSafe case for the 16E that has the magnetic ring, but regardless you won't get the 15-watt MagSafe charging the 16 offers. So that's all the main differences, and if I'm being honest guys, as much as the 16E does have some weird omissions like the lack of MagSafe, the core experience is pretty similar across these devices, and you also get better battery life, and so you could consider saving that $200. But if you don't exclusively shop through Apple, you can actually find the 16 for less via third parties. In fact, if you're willing to buy refurbished or open box, the 16 is usually only $100 more and will likely continue getting cheaper, and so at that price, you could justify just going with the 16. But honestly, as much as there's been a lot of hate for the 16E, I think for the average Joe, saving the cash and going with this over the 16 is not a bad idea. Though do remember, as always, older iPhones are 100% worth considering, and you do get better value with older iPhones. You can get the iPhone 15 for less than the 16E, for example, and yes, I know that lacks Apple Intelligence, but it's still a solid device and has some of the premium features the iPhone 16 has. Or you can also get the iPhone 15 Pro refurb, which is actually better than the iPhone 16E and the 16, and is available for a similar price. Amazon Renewed has these phones, and do remember you get a 90-day return window with them, so yeah, I'll leave links below to buy these phones. Anyway, let me know your thoughts in the comments, make sure to like and subscribe for more content like this, and thank you for watching.